Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chaney podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Chaney, and we on this podcast like to talk about the human element, the stories of the people that are behind supply chains. The supply chains, of course, make everything in the world work. And we want to talk about the people that are making supply chains work. And today we're going to get a perspective from someone who is on the integrator side of the house. And I've actually, after over 100 podcast episodes, I've not had a lot of voices on that have been able to represent that part of the industry. So really excited today to be joined by Krish Nathan, the CEO of Element Logic Americas, and unpack, if you will, pun intended, a little bit about what's going on in that part of the industry and a little bit about just his personal story. So with that, welcome, Krish, to the show. And could you take a couple of minutes to just give people a quick overview of yourself?
Okay, Nathan, thank you. Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast. You'll be surprised to know it's my first podcast that I've ever done. So happy to be here and looking forward to doing many more. So my name's Krish Nathan. I'm the CEO of Element Logic Americas, and you might guess from the accent, I'm English. I was brought up in Nottingham in England. Uh, Actually half Indian, half English. My father moved from India to England to do his education, ended up staying there, and I have a similar journey. So when in the 2000s, early 2000, I made a decision to come and spend 1 year in the US, and here I am 26 years later. So yeah, quite a journey.
I like it. Quick question. Obviously, your last name is my first name, so we're basically brothers somewhere down the line, I guess. I've never seen anyone with the last name Nathan. Can you tell us more about that? Is that a popular name?
Yeah,
Have you run into other
yeah.
people?
So it's actually it's the second half of an Indian name,
Okay.
and the full name was Jambanathan.
Okay.
And when I was 16, I decided, and my parents supported me and said, nobody can ever spell your last name, so we're just going to change it to something that people can spell. And so
Okay.
that became the Nathan dynasty.
Okay.
So
All
there you
right.
go.
I like it.
And as you said, it's not. I certainly come across it as a first name, but from time to time. But as a last name, don't think I've come across it.
Oh, you might be the one of one then. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's fun. I kind of think of you now as like a celebrity, like Jay-Z or whatnot, that you just straight up make your own name. I don't know many people like that.
It's like The
Some
Rock.
people would say that I made my name Nathan Chaney so I could call myself Supply Chaney, but that is not true. It is my last name truly is Chaney. Um, so let's talk a bit about your origin story a little bit. So you kind of indicated that you grew up in Nottingham, I would say, but Nottingham, I guess, as you might say it. What was that like? And what kind of kid were you? How'd you keep yourself busy?
Sort of middle class English background. Regular local comprehensive government school. And spent all my time as a kid playing as much football or soccer as Americans like to call it as possible. That was my passion. I would come home from school, drop my school bag off, and run down to the local park and play football. Probably 6 days, 7 days a week. Every opportunity I got. I wasn't a great student by any means. Barely scraped through out of in England you can leave school at 16, so it's not that unusual. But I ended up staying on and doing what we call A levels, which is 16 to 18, and then going to university and doing an engineering degree. But across the board was definitely not a great scholar by any means, and just put all my time and energy into sport.
Hey, kids out there, no, you need to focus on school. Do not listen too much to this. Um, so lots of football then there. And what did you kind of think you wanted to be when you grow up? Like what, based on what your parents did you have like kind of some paths set for you or some expectations? Like what was that like?
Yeah, well, so my parents were both in education, so they were, very disappointed with this very poor student. Mother's a teacher, father's a university professor, and for me, just got into that world of trying to, I guess, become a person that 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 taught people and moved towards, I guess, just imparting knowledge. But for me, it was their stories were very different from mine. So I'm the first person in our family, and probably in even if I look across the cousins and nephews that really went into um, business. It was a very um, sort of education orientated teachers. Of course, if you come from an Indian background, you're supposed to be a doctor. That's the other story. Everybody, half the family was either, what would you want to be? You must be a doctor. Um, and then slowly, became a sort of, oh, okay, you could be an engineer. If you can't quite make it being a doctor, then you just be an engineer. So, so that was my journey with them as parents. But yeah,
Right.
great time, and look back on it very fondly.
I feel like most folks that go down an engineering path, particularly mechanical or industrial or whatnot, were, like to play with Legos, like to take things apart, like to understand how things worked. Was that characteristic of you as
I,
well,
w-
or
I wish I could tell. I
okay,
wish I could tell you that was that was my passion as a kid. Not really. Again, for me, it was I just loved winning. I loved competing. I played I played football very competitively, for the school, for the local city, for the county, all of those, and then as I got a little bit older, at sort of 16, I guess 14 to 20, became quite proficient at playing a sport called squash, which is it's not huge in America, um, but it's a big sport in England. It's the first time it's going to be in the Olympics this year. Well, not this year, but the next Olympics that's coming up here in Los Angeles. Squash has finally got its spot in the Olympic Games. So I kind of just love I love, we play tournaments, um, team sports, individual. So just for me, it was, what I loved. My passion was competing, um, winning, losing, and being part of a competitive landscape. And I think that's what's
yeah.
translated for me into my business career.
Makes a lot of sense. There's definitely well, you need to have a bit of a competitive spirit, I guess, to survive in the business world. So talk a little bit about that education path then, and kind of what happened after kind of
Yeah,
school days.
yeah. For me, I was graduated in engineering which was a struggle, but I did get out of engineering school. But then I had a really fortunate turn of events, and that was my first job out of university, was with a startup, what I would call a startup now, right? As I look back on it, it was a startup called Robotech, and this would have been in 86, maybe 87. Um, and Robotech was a company that had a founder that had a massive passion for robotics, and he had got some funding to start this business, and he had a small group of people that were going out and offering robotic solutions to industrial companies, in the late 80s, and um, they were advertising for a junior engineering position, and they happened to be walking distance from my house. We lived close enough to the industrial estate, so I applied for the job, and I was fortunate enough to get they gave me an opportunity to go work for them. and that really sparked my passion in sort of industrial automation. And we had really interesting projects. If I look back on it, we would go to see a customer, um, and we would say we will automate or robot. We'll put a robot in to do stuff that you can't, that isn't, you don't believe can be done with automation. So we would invent all kind of crazy machines. That would do this stuff. And if I look back on it now, it was so far ahead of his time. It aspired into different orgs and transformed or whatever. And honestly, I don't even know where they are today. But I mean, that organization was so far ahead of its time. And I'm going to get one little story for you. We built many crazy machines, from breaking toffee into different shapes. But the one that became the most commercialized, I would think, would be, we were the company that put the widget in the bottom of a can of Guinness for the very first time. So today, if you buy a can of beer, Guinness or Boddington's, I mean, these are mostly European brands, but I think it's an international thing now. There's a little capsule in the bottom of those cans. When you open the can, the pressure changes and it creates the head of beer. So the head of a Guinness, the white part on top of the black, right? That's created by a steady tiny piece of gas that's in the bottom of this can. So when that product was invented for the very first time, they needed to figure out, how do we get these widgets in the bottom of these cans at very high speeds, at hundreds of cans a minute. And so somehow they found our company, and we created a set of machinery that would do this for them. And it's fully, it's commercialized now, and I'm sure it's made by many different people. But it was a super exciting journey, and we did so many different little clever things back then, and that gave me my passion for industrial automation and robotics.
That's an amazing story. To your point, that is pretty much what we all talk about all day these days. And for you to have been gotten experience and exposure to that so early on in your career must have been a treat. What happened next after that stop at the kind of startup robotics company?
So they managed, they had all kind of different grants, and one of the grants they got was training grant, and they gave me the opportunity to do some formalized sales training, and that was the Dale Carnegie sales training program. And so they sponsored me, if you like, or they paid for it. And they said, if you're prepared to do this after work in your time, we'll pay for it. And so I decided that was something I wanted to do, and a couple of times a week, between about 5 and 8 o'clock every in the evening, I would drive out to this. Remember it vividly. This hotel was about 45-minute drive away, and we do this course, and it became like a such a passion for me. I really really enjoyed, and still to this day give away copies of Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People that I have on my bookshelf, and that really changed my feeling about how people interact with each other, and was a really exciting opportunity for me to get into the world of sales. And then that, of course, then I moved a couple of times in England, and then in late 90s, 2000, long story, but I ended up bumping into the SDI organization, and they offered me a job in England, which I turned down. So the CEO at the time there said, if you don't want to come and work for us in England, how about I get you a job in America? Come and work for us in Los Angeles. And I thought, that sounds interesting. I'll go do that for a year. And yeah, flew over in February of 2000, and yeah, as I said, still here.
Well, and the Y2K didn't take down the entire internet or anything to allow you to be
Right.
able to book a ticket and get here in February of 2000.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I've had a handful of sales engineers on the podcast that have, talked about that. They've all got engineering degrees and they've kind of moved over into that kind of sales and customer facing side of things. And hearing your story, it sounds like, at that point in their career, sales I think is like the closest thing you can do to teaching. It's a teacher in a business sort of thing, I think, because you're educating a customer, you're walking them through. Tell me a little bit more about, I guess, any suggestions or folks for the folks that are currently, sales engineers out in the industry, kind of given the path that you've been on and what you've learned since those days?
I mean, I would just go straight to the formal, the Dale Carnegie School for me is second to none. We've also, give a plug out to the Sandler sales training program. We've more recently I've been exposed to some of that, and we put many of our salespeople through the Sandler training program, and I think it's a great journey. But there's a quote from Dale Carnegie, and because I hope I get it right, which is something along the lines of, "People don't know how much you care, don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." There you go. That's it. I got it right eventually. I use that all the time, and I think it's so appropriate for especially sales engineers, because engineers know so much that they forget to listen before they impart their vast worldly knowledge onto a prospect or a potential client. And I think that can very easily turn off the person that's listening, because they don't really care, because at the moment they want you to care about what they're what's in it, what about they want to know about that, they want you to know about their story. And so I think that's my favorite quote that I butchered it a little bit, but I get it. I get it right eventually.
So, I feel like there's two paths to sales, and that is the person that went to school and got a marketing degree, and business, and they haven't really been an engineer. They haven't really built the systems and all this sort of stuff. And then there's kind of the path you've been on, which is the engineer path to the sales engineer. Kind of from your perspective today, is one a preferable path than the other? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I I don't think there's any substitute for boots on the ground, real world learnings and real world experience. And um, I think you don't have, it doesn't mean you don't get it if you do a marketing degree in a sale, and you come out of formal training. Um, but I think you do need to get it, and I think sometimes people get catapulted into higher positions without that boots on the ground experience. I in my earlier career, I did telesales. I sat with back when we had a phone book, and got a few pages of the phone book given to me, and that was my quota for the evening. And dial and talk to people. And I also did door to door sales over a summer vacation, over several summers. And to me, there is no substitute for getting the reps in, getting that, and just that experience dealing with all, all, all manner of different people. So I think you have to. My CEO calls it Gemba, right? You've got to go to where the place of work is done. It's a Japanese term for where work is done. Um, and I didn't know what it was until he joined us a year and a half ago. But as I told him, I feel like I've lived most of my career in Gemba, where work gets done, and I think that's important for any salespeople and for any people coming out of far more formal education, marketing degrees, MBAs, and so forth. I think they need to really spend a lot of time in the field.
I like it. I like it. Good sound advice there. And also kudos to the Gimba, influence there now. Uh,
Yeah.
so you moved over to sunny Los Angeles, out of England. So that must have been a bit of a change. And kind of walk us through kind of those early years in your story, with SDI.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a complete culture shock. I think for the people that, the people in the existing, the company that I joined, half the people didn't understand anything I was saying because my accent has toned down a lot in my 26 years here. So I certainly remember showing up here and talking to people and them going, "What? It sounds like English." Um, but yeah, it was a big cultural difference in terms of just everything. But from a business perspective, my, when I landed in the US was a s- um, I came here as a salesperson, so I got all this formal sales training now. I'd gone to Gemba and all that stuff, right? The SDI CEO said, "I will hire you, put you on in a sales capacity." And when I got here in 2000, January, February 2000, when I set foot in the door, he said to me, "What? I know you've got sales background. We don't need sales anymore. We've just sold the largest contract that we've ever sold in our history. So you're now a project manager." I said, "Okay, right. Hey, glad glad about that." And so it was actually with JC Penney, the organization, who are still a customer today. 26 years later, are still a customer that I deal with, not on an account level. So, we have an account manager, but there are many occasions that I talk to the leadership at JCPenney about what they're doing and their journey. And I'm still very active in their, when we're working with them, and they're still a big customer of ours. So very dear to my heart, my very first customer, and still strong and with us and doing a lot of work together. But so that, of course, that business transition was, okay, now you've got to figure out how these systems are actually built. So rather than being the person that gets the things over the line and then throws it over the fence to project management, which in my English days and in my organizations I'd worked for in England, there was a really strict line between salesperson gets it to this point and then they hand it over. And really, that was the end of the road, and the salesperson then went off and found another opportunity. So, of course, complete opposite end of the spectrum here. I now got handed this thing to be the to project manage, and we built 13 buildings for JCPenney in over the course of about 2.5 to 3 years, and so those buildings consisted of conveyors, item sorters, garment on hanger, racking, mezzanines. So kind of the full service into a WCS. We didn't do the WMS, but we integrated into WMS. So that journey as a project implementation specialist, and not specialist because I was learning as we were going, but project implementation, becoming a specialist, really helped me in my in my journey here, and really set me up, I think, for success in my latter career.
Uh, because you kind of got to see, the hunt and the gatherer out there and bringing it in, and then
Yeah,
having to execute, handle, and see that transition, and see it all the way through to execution and completion.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so we went through that whole, there was a consulting firm building selection. They didn't have the buildings. We had to do site selection, building sizing, the whole thing from ground to hand over the keys and then post customer support. So yeah, got to see the full life cycle there, which was great. And then you end up with so many detailed discussions that as a salesperson you often don't get into. Um, you know, the real intricate things of, well, okay, so when we open this carton at receiving, what happens with, what do we scan? What do we scan it with? The sales proposal would say you open a carton and scan it, right? But within that, there's another 20 steps, right? You open it, you scan it. Okay, what if the right thing's not in there? Now you've got to do an inspection. Now you've got to do a change. All of these things often get glossed over in the proposal stage because you don't, you just, the customer or the integrator doesn't get into that level of detail, but the implementation team does. And so you learn a lot about what was, maybe glossed over or forgotten or should have been thought about, both from a customer and an integrator side.
So let's fast forward a little bit. So you went from that, in the early 2000s to, kind of where is SDI today? Now there's Element Logic in the picture. Kind of fast forward us through to kind of what the current state of the organization is, and I guess just what y'all do.
Yeah, so we joined the Element Logic global organization in 2022. So just about yeah, it was almost exactly 4 years ago now, actually, if I look at the date. Um, I think it's fair to say that Element Logic. So Element Logic was the, and still is, the uh, leading AutoStore integration partner. Um, and oh, fantastic! You got got your prop there, brilliant, love it. So they they are the leader. They sell more of these AutoStore systems than anybody globally. But they had not ever entered into the US market, um, and so their entree into the US market was acquire SDI. And so I was one of the 5 owners of SDI, and we sold our business to Element Logic. And we partnered with Element because there was such a good cultural fit. Actually, we really felt that they were kind of operated like a family business. We operated like a family business. And today we're, I think, roughly 1,000 people. So it's much bigger than globally. So much bigger than a family business, but still I felt was important. We all felt was important to maintain the intimacy of how you do business and how you interact with people. And so I think what we brought to the table was everything but AutoStore. So the Element Logic story was extremely strong in the Nordics, with AutoStore as the cornerstone, or this really everything they did. Um, and they were leaving a lot of other stuff on the table in those applications, the receiving conveyors and the put away and the robotics and all the other things that went around inside of the four walls of a DC. They were really not pursuing, um, and we were the opposite. We were doing everything but the AutoStore, really. And so when we brought these two organizations together, it became a really um, a great marriage, and it's I would say in many ways it's changed it definitely changed the trajectory of our US business, and I would go as far as to say it's changed the trajectory of the global business, because the global business has now realized that they want to be a full service integrator, it with AutoStore still at the cornerstone of what we do, and it's the heart of everything. It's really not everything, it's the heart of many things we do, but it's not everything we do. And we today in the Americas, I think we've benefited from helping the global org understand some of these other things that you can do with the trust and the relationships that we all have with our customer base, right? So that's kind of how I perceive what we do. Is we're given trust by our customers, and so that means that we can do many different things for them. We don't have to just be the AutoStore provider.
I like it. I like it. Tell me a little bit about, there's going to be a healthy number of folks listening to this because this is the full supply chain podcast that are not familiar with what the role of an integrator is. For those of us, in the industry, whatnot, we know, talk about it all day. But, if you're explaining it to a third grader or something like that, how would you explain kind of the role of integrators in the industry?
Yeah, so I tell people, for me, I tell people we're a little bit like, if you imagine, most people can understand, maybe not third grade, but many people understand that when you build a house, right? You build a house, you hire an architect. And I feel, so to me, that's the analogy of what an integrator is, because the architect will get the right fridge for you, the right construction layout, the right maybe they'll deal with the interior design. So they're the person that sort of puts this vision together. And I feel the integrator is in the warehouse is that person that becomes the visionary for the end-to-end process of the building. I would say traditionally an integrator doesn't manufacture product. There's so much crossover now in the space. There are people that do manufacture. We do a little bit of manufacturing. Traditionally, a integrator has a very strong software suite. We have a very strong software suite, and so the offering that we have to our customers is a end-to-end solution design. Um, in many cases, with our software as the glue that's holding these different pieces of automation together.
Okay, all right. Uh, it was really, I think, a great picture that you painted a while ago when you gave the example of J.C. Penney and standing at facilities and site selection and all the above. Um, I feel like the fact that for integrators, it's, you're like, "Hey, we're gonna go just resell all these things that are being made by other people and mix them up and create a solution." So I feel like it's easy to say you're an integrator, but I feel like it's hard to differentiate or kinda compare or like, win in the marketplace. So can you talk a little bit to that point and kinda how Element Logic approaches that?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's everybody says they're an integrator. I think the to me the differentiator is first of all you're bringing value, and your value is the knowledge that you have about different technologies. So um, I think as an integrator that allows you to um, select the best in class types of automation for different pieces of the warehouse. And often as a end-to-end OEM, you perhaps are less agnostic about that journey, right, or about the selection, because of course if you've got all of these you use what's if that's your tool bag, you use what's in your tool bag. I feel like as an integrator your tool bag is infinite, and you can really adapt, and you bring to me the value is that you bring that adaptivity, that knowledge, that creativity to the customer, right? So really you're providing your knowledge input to the customer. I think that's what differentiates us. It's so difficult to put your finger on it. We all say, well, our software is different. Yes, we like to think our software is different from everybody else, but I'm sure the next integrator you get on here is going to say their software is different as well. I think it is. I think we have some unique features in our software. Of course, I think other people have unique features in their software, but I think what you bring to the table, what we bring to the table, what I bring to the table, and my team is you bring in the many years of experience and knowledge and different situations that you've come across, and you're able to apply those to a particular environment and a case that you're dealing with.
If I look at your kind of career going back to, 2020 or even a little bit before, then you've really been able to see it was called this distribution at scale in e-commerce and the explosion of just logistics and supply chain on sort of the business front. Back then, you had transportation managers and you had no real presence of the chief supply chain officers, really making decisions. And now it's like a supply chain world, I think. I'm a little biased though. Can you talk about like how, from your seat, from your perspective, how you've seen kind of this growth and movement, within the four walls, and how e-commerce and, just the demand for fast delivery has changed kind of like how you build a warehouse and the tools you use
Yeah.
inside.
I mean, as you say, it's a remarkable uh, journey that this industry has been on over. If I think of my 26 years, um, uh, I mean, you would, as you say, when you go and try and explain what you do to somebody. When I used to go, you go out and you go meet somebody in a bar and try and explain what you do, their eyes would just even at just completely glaze over. Right? It's just like what on earth is this person talking about? Even within our own industry, I would go to a conference I don't know, man, apparel manufacturers conference or a whatever, some kind of industry contract, and you'd say, we work in a warehouse. What? What? You mean automation? What? But now, I think Amazon changed this, right? I mean, the space is just so visible. Even we even got commercials on the TV with inside of a wares. I mean, it's almost it's not that not even not unusual. It's commonplace now to see the inside of a warehouse and picking environment and forklift trucks and robots and all of this stuff has just become so commonplace that I think most people now, when you say to them, "This is what I do," I usually say something along the lines of, when you order something that comes from a warehouse. Oh yeah, I always order, get deliveries every day. Okay, right. So when those two items, when you open that package, getting those two items together in that package is quite difficult, and there's lots of automation and lots of technology that goes into making that happen. Um, it, without the advent of e-com, Amazon, and many other sort of players that are breaking breaking those barriers, I still think we'd be talking into space with nobody be able to understand what we said. But it's I mean it's just it's night and day, the difference in terms of what we do and how visible it is.
As we kind of wrap up things here, I would love to try to tease, one or two more nuggets of wisdom and insight from you. Either just, kind of on the state of technology in warehouses front, or just, being in business and in the supply chain space these days.
I mean, I think the state of technology is in it it is interesting in that it's evolving so rapidly. I mean, every week there's a new piece of technology that we see on LinkedIn, or you see this sort of new mousetrap, something that's out there that somebody's invented, and there's some really clever stuff out there. Um, I think for me, the challenge for our customer, and I think where I think we fit is to deliver efficiency and deliver technology, but also deliver it with safety and security and reliability. And so I think that's the journey we're on at the moment is, and I think uh, many of I mean, the AutoStore product line specifically is so geared to that. So that's why it's been so successful. It's such a small number of moving parts, and any of those moving parts are 100% redundant, and so the reliability factor is extremely high. Um, so I think our job is to try and filter out and find what those technologies are that deliver efficiency, deliver a game changing environment to what you're doing with space usage or labor efficiency, but also do it reliably and deliver it really quickly, and again, um, um, safely, right? So you deliver, you turn it on, it works, you hand the keys over. People that have been in this industry for 26 years know that, in the late 2000s, it was not, it was, we've come through an evolution to get to this point. So I think that for me is our job as integrators, is to bring safety, security to our customer base. And I think with that, that goes back to my point on trust, right? You do that, you get trusted. You do it again, you get trusted. The trust builds based on you performing.
All right. I like it. Well, we could have probably gone on for another little while on this topic, but I appreciate you joining in and being you're so honored to be the first podcast that you've been on, and hopefully it was a good experience and didn't scare you away from the concept.
Yeah, I love it, Nathan. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. It's surprising how quickly the time has gone. So yeah, I look forward to coming back on.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you.